Greetings once again, Retreat Church. Mature love is complicated. And this weekend at the Retreat Church, we are doing our first weekend at the retreat where we are discussing the 5 love languages. And at the end of this weekend on Sunday, I'll be preaching a message entitled Mature Love is Complicated. Because even in the most basic chapter on love in the Bible, the most well-read chapter in the Bible, 1 Corinthians chapter 13 gives us all the ways in which we can express love to one another and all the ways that love should behave, right? We even think that this passage is so depictive of love that we even kind of put Jesus' name in there. Sometimes I've heard it said that not only is love all these things, but Jesus is all these things, and God is all these things. And then we set all those things above us to be this benchmark for what mature love is really like. But after Paul explains what love does and how love behaves and how people think, well, God is this way too and Jesus is this way too because they are love, we start to get this kind of sense that maybe it's not as simple as we first read. For Paul says in verse 11 of that chapter, he says, when I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I gave up childish ways. Now, after an explanation of love, that verse kind of jumps out at you as to why is he saying this right here? Could he be saying, why don't we put away an elementary view of love? Why don't we put away a childish way of thinking about love? And let's grow up in our understanding of how love behaves, and let's mature in our understanding of how to give and receive love. And then we get into verse 12, which kind of tells us that a grown-up, mature understanding of love is a little bit foggy. That perhaps a grown-up, mature view of love is not as simple as we first think it is. For he says in verse 12, for now we see in a mirror dimly. In other words, we're trying to find our way. So when you get out of the shower and you want to look in the mirror and you shave, and by the way, I don't know why anybody shaves after they take a shower when the mirror's all fogged up. Man, get a clue, shave and then shower. I don't know what you're thinking. But anyway, enough of those home tips. But he says that we see as in a mirror dimly. It's hard to see what love really is like. It's hard to see and to receive love in its purest form because we're human and because we're in the here and the now and we're not where we're going to be. In fact, as he continues in the verse, he says, but then, leading to our eternal position, but then face to face. Now I know in part. So you and I know part of love. It says, then I shall know fully, even as I have been fully known. So think about that for a moment. Because you and I are trying to figure out this love thing. And we understand that a mature position in love may be kind of dim, may be kind of confusing, may be partial. We must understand this phrase that says, even as I have been fully known. So he's talking about us in the now as seeing this dimly, but then in the future, in our heavenly home, we will see it fully and we will fully know. And then he goes back to the past and he says, even as I have been fully known. Well, that's God, the God piece. See, because as we're trying to figure out this love thing, we're trying to figure out ourselves and we're trying to know those we're relating to and what's the best way that I can love my spouse and my children and my friends and my co-workers and all the people around me. What's the best way to love people that I don't even know, people that I just meet on the street? What is the best way to love? That's a confusing question for our day. But I want you to know this, that right now, as you sit where you sit and I sit where I sit, you are fully known by God, and I am fully known by God. And then he gives you this conclusion in verse 13. He says, so now, back to the now, faith, hope, and love abide. These three, but the greatest of these is love. I want to submit to you kind of a challenge. The challenge as we deal with all this and try to get our minds wrapped around the fact that a mature love is complicated, and it's very difficult for us to always get it right in the practice of love. I want to challenge you to do this one thing, and that is to receive love with faith and with hope. Let me try to explain that. If you are receiving love from a spouse, from a child, from a friend, know that they're not going to get that perfect. They're not always going to display their love for you perfectly because it's complicated and it's confusing. So can you put a little bit of faith in the people around you and give them some grace? Would you trust that they're trying their best to love you? Would you give them the benefit of the doubt of being well motivated and well intended in their attempts to love you? And you can give them some grace when they don't get it right, when they try to love you but they end up really hurting you, hurting your feelings, and maybe being a bit destructive in your life, and that was never their intent. Can you put your faith in God, knowing that He fully knows you, that you don't fully know yourself and you don't fully know the situation, and I don't even fully know me? Can I receive love from God with faith? Faith that He has my best interest in mind, faith that He knows me better than I know myself, faith that He knows my future when I don't. Speaking of the future, that second piece of receiving love with hope, and the hope that as we move forward, God will unfold more and more of His plan for our life. And as He lovingly cares for us and disciplines us and shapes and molds us, and we sometimes misunderstand that and we get confused in receiving God's love, but we would receive God's love in the hope that everything that He has planned for us will come to fruition in our lives as we submit ourselves to His love and guidance. I think that that's a pretty steep challenge for us today, because mature love is complicated, but the challenge is to receive love with faith and hope. I believe you're up for the challenge, and I believe the people around you would really appreciate giving them some faith and hope, because those that are in your lives do really love you. They're doing their best, and may we all give each other grace in this position of trying to be mature in giving and receiving love. God bless you.